Years ago today, Eric Garner was killed with a chokehold by New York City policeman Daniel Patiello in Staten Island, New York. It was his death and the movement that followed that really was the beginning of this nation having to deal with the new wave of police misconduct. Trayvon Martin's case woke up a lot of people, but George Zimmerman was not a policeman. Eric Garner was killed by a police officer. They, despite our marching by the thousands, and despite the persistence and dedication of Eric Garner's family, the Staten Island District Attorney would not bring any charges, none. Therefore, there was no trial. In fact, it took 5 years before the policeman was even fired. But Esaw Garner Snipe, who was his widow, his daughter Emerald, his daughter Erica, who is now passed on, and others kept fighting. And a young man named Roee caught the idea and sat with Esaw and said, let's show the world what would have happened had there been a trial. And we want you to watch this trial and watch this film because it is what started a movement that led to George Floyd and all that you're seeing going on now. When I first heard that George Floyd said, I can't breathe, I immediately thought about Eric Garner, because that's what he said 11 times. And there were no charges. George Floyd at least has charges. We do not know what happened with the trial. But you can watch the trial that never happened with America's trial because of Esaw, because of Roee, because of Emerald. Before we go into the film, let me talk to Esaw and Roee so you have background on this. Let me start with Esaw. Esaw has become like a sister to me like a big brother. So I can talk to her in our family kind of way. Esaw, I know you have been a very fervent fighter, but you really don't like a lot of publicity. You've done a lot of television, a lot of press conferences, but we almost had to force you because publicity wasn't your thing. So what made you do this film? How did they convince you to do this?
He really didn't have to convince me. His sincerity when he approached me at the Brooklyn Bridge, I was receiving a lot of cards that day. So I was just sticking them in my bag and sticking them in my bag. But for some reason, his card went into the wallet with my money. So about 2 days later, I was going to pay for something and his card fell out. And it was like a sign to me. So I said, let me give him a call and see what he has to say. And I called him, and I believe that first conversation, we were on the phone at least 2 hours.
Wow.
And his listening, people can hear what you're saying, but you can tell when they're listening. And he was listening to me, and he felt my pain, and he understood, what I was going through. And in approaching me about the film, I just said, come on, let's do it. It sounds like a good idea. It was something fresh. It was something that no one had ever done before. And him being a new film producer, I said, I can be a tool in success. I can help him, go further in his career. And also it could help in my healing process and being able to talk about it. And maybe, the legal people would see it and say, well, maybe we do have some charges we can pull up, but unfortunately the movie came out, after the fact. But that was my initial thought, that maybe it would open some eyes and let them see that we did have a case, that we could prosecute, that we could get him to go to jail. And that was my hope. It might have been wishful thinking, but that was my hope. That was what I was hanging all of it on. And, him being who he was and feeling my pain and being considerate every step of the way, asking me how I felt. Was I okay with this? Was I okay with that? You know, and anything you don't want done, Esaw, we won't do. Anything you don't want to talk about, we won't talk about. He didn't do anything without my 100% behind him all the way. And I just felt like it was a match made in heaven. And he's become a part of the family. And he's more than a friend. We love him like we love you, Rev, you know, and everybody at NAN, you know, and I just felt like people needed to see and they need to hear the story and how the justice system failed us. And maybe they would do something to change for future, hoping that there wouldn't be any future incidents like Eric. But of course, that was another wishful thinking. But now they seem to look at it a little differently now, you know,
What
since
moved
George
you,
Floyd.
what moved you, Roee, to go over to Esaw and the Brooklyn Bridge, and what moved you to have this kind of sensitivity? I don't hear sound on
No,
it.
sorry. As someone who grew up not in the United States, as you know, as a new immigrant to the United States who had only lived in New York for about a year before Eric Garner was killed, that video was such a shock to me. I remember, you know, when I remember being like 6 years old and hearing about the LA riots, you know, but having that background when it's something that happens far, far away in some distant land is so different than, you know, living in Harlem, you know, walking my dog past the rally that was going on, hearing people at the grocery store talking about it, which eventually kind of led me. I was living very close to the House of Justice back then, and that kind of led me to go to your rallies on Saturdays on 145th Street, that's the first time that I saw Esaw and her family. And then when the non-indictment came in a few months after that, you know, that was just like another punch to the stomach. And I remember I was just working out at the gym, kind of trying to, you know, not being able to stop thinking about it. And then it just hit me, you know, I'm living in New York, I'm a film student. Everyone around me seems to think there should have been a trial. All the people who would have participated in this trial are probably 15 to 20 miles away from me. And maybe this is something that I could pull off. And then a few months went by, I graduated from film school. And it was the 1 year anniversary of Eric's death. And I went to another rally, and that's where Esaw and I met. And like she said, I gave her my card, and the rest is history.
You actually participate in the film, Esaw. What was it like for you to participate in this film, and how you dealt with your emotions of the trial that didn't happen? To us, Eric was this great symbol, but to you, this was your husband. How was it for you to work on this set?
Oh my God, Rev, it was horrible. You know, even though Roee talked to me extensively about what was going to be said and, you know, everything, it still hit me like it was brand new. Like I didn't know what was going on, but I knew, but it hit me so hard and I got so angry that I actually wanted to jump over the stand and punch the prosecutor in her face. Like
Wow.
I was so angry and then when the judge kept, the judge kept stopping me from saying what I wanted to say. That's when you see me in the film say, you know, if I can't say what I want to say, then I have nothing else to say. You know, and I asked him, you know, what he wanted me to do. And he said, Esaw, just be yourself. You know, and for people, it's a film or it's what would have happened. But for me, it was my life. It was something that, and then all those medical issues, that had nothing to do with his death, you know, so that annoyed me. You know, it was just like they were trying to fault him for being sick and saying that he died because of his sickness, which was not true, because had they left him alone, he wouldn't have died that day, but from an asthma attack or any other medical issues that he had. And the emotion was it was real. That was what I was feeling. It was no acting. You know, I didn't have to put onions under my eyes to make me cry. It was real for me. And even though it was a fake trial, it was real for me. It really was. It was really real, you know, and I just had to let my emotions flow. And when I got off the stand and I had to leave out the courtroom and I went to the back, you know, Roee left immediately without even overseeing the following witness. He came back there to see if I was okay, you know, to see, you know, if I, you know, was okay. And I thought that that was the sweetest thing ever, like, because he should have been, you know, anybody else would have been about, oh, you know, she's okay, her family's back there with her, let me do what I'm here to do. But he didn't. He dropped everything and came back there to make sure that I was okay. And then the prosecutor later came to me afterwards and said, Esaw, are you okay? You do know that this was fake, right? And I'm like, yeah, and I'm sorry, but I really, you know, it was real for me. And it still is, you know. And with the death of George Floyd, it felt like seeing Eric die all over again. I couldn't sleep for 2 weeks. And I told Roee, I called him and tell him I was so upset that this was allowed to happen again. You know, and you scroll through Facebook and it's still happening.
Yeah.
You know, it's like they don't care whether it's banned, illegal, or whatever. They're still doing it.
Roee, what gave you this unique idea to do it as a movie of a trial that never happened, and you use actual prosecutor and lawyers, not actors? Was that difficult?
So the reason why I chose to use non-actors and have the actual people who would have or could have participated is because I don't think anybody cares what my personal opinion is. And so if I were to write a script and cast actors, the version of the trial that we would have seen was Roee Messinger's version, like what Roee thinks should have happened. And like, who cares what I think should have happened? But the minute that I have real lawyers and the real witnesses and they're performing or they are, you know, enacting this trial as it could have happened, all of a sudden it's not what I think should have happened. It's what really could have happened if there was a decision to indict. And to me, I think that's so much more powerful. And then you know, surprisingly, working with non-actors was actually in a lot of ways a lot easier, because I think that as a director, when you're working with actors, you are kind of like the, you know, the keeper of the story, and you always know better. You always know what the character is going through or what is the motivation, and the actors come to you and ask you questions. Should I do this? Should I do that? But here, even though I was still the director and I was still the keeper of the story and had kind of like the bird's eye view of everything, each one of the people who participated, the lawyers, the witnesses, they all knew their role much better than I did. You know, I didn't have to tell the eyewitness what he saw. I didn't have to tell the forensic pathologist how to read the autopsy report, right? And so in that case, it was just actually very easy, I guess.
Esaw, with all that's going on now, Barbara Younger has a question. It says, since the death of your husband, don't you feel that cops are out of control with violence against Black men? I think you alluded to that. But how do you feel about what's going on now in light of what happened to your husband?
I'm afraid of the police, Reverend. You know this from day one. I've told you I've been afraid of the police because they don't care. They don't have the community, I don't even know what word to use, but they don't have no compassion. That's the word. They don't have no compassion. And it's like, you did something against the law, and boom, bam, bow, you're going down. That's it, you know, and by any means necessary. You know, if I have to choke you, if I have to shoot you, if I have to tase you, whatever it is I have to do, you did something wrong and you're going down. It's not about de-escalating. They talking about de-escalating. I haven't seen not one officer yet try to de-escalate a violent situation in any of the cases in the last 6 years. We haven't seen any de-escalation tactics used by these police. I've had several incidents with the police not directly, but indirectly. Being in a car with my cousin, she made a wrong turn. The cop comes over to the car. He asks for her license and stuff, and then he looks in the car and he says, "Oh, so you think you can do what you want to do because you have Miss Garner in your car?" And I'm like, wow, did he really just say that? Like, and it's crazy. It's like, I'm scared. I stay in the house. I bought this house out in Jersey. I ain't been out the house since February 29th. And I'm just in here. And I don't even I try to keep my sons, and they're grown. I can't keep them in the house. But I'm so afraid every time they leave out the house. I tell them, please don't do anything to give the cops a reason to stop you, because it's not about stopping a regular person no more. You're Eric Garner's son. So they're going to look at you and try to make an example of you, and you could wind up dead, and I'm just scared of the police. I don't think that anything, small changes, yes, we got the Eric Garner law, but now we need it to go federal. We need it to be in all 50 states, not just New York. We need it to be, if they use the chokehold, they need to be held accountable for it, and they need to go to jail. Why are they giving these officers bail? They see what they did to George Floyd. What else is there you need to see? Like you said, probable cause is a reason for arrest. They already have probable cause. They've been arrested. Now they bail. What's taking it so long? If it was Eric or George Floyd, they would have been convicted, tried, and in jail right now. Period.
Roee, in this climate, what makes this film relevant to the general public?
I think that with everything that's going on right now, there is something in this film that people should leave after they watch it. They should leave asking themselves, and that's, why was there no trial? Right? In the end of the day, it's a courtroom drama, and sure, there's a question, guilty, not guilty. Oh, that's fine and well, but the real question that people should leave this film with is, why was there no trial? And I think that the answer to that question, and the honest answer to that question, when a viewer watches the film, asks that question, and reaches a conclusion by themselves, has to be that systemic racism still exists. It's still a problem. There is one justice system for Black people. There's another justice system for white people, and there's a whole other justice system for police officers. And the acknowledgement of that has to be the beginning of healing what's going on right now. But there can be no healing without that realization. And in that sense, I think the film is very relevant.
Esaw, the fact that I know you are such a committed family person, and you kept your son, daughters, lost a daughter, now you have grandchildren. One day, you have to sit down and explain to your grandchildren what was Eric like and what happened. What are you going to tell your grandchildren?
Well, my grandchildren, they remember Pop Pop. They know who Grandpa was. They recognize his name when they see it on TV or they see it on someone's T-shirt. And they ask, the only question that they really asked so far was, why did they kill Grandpa? Mm. What did Grandpa do to make the police kill him? And I was stunned. One, at the question, and two, at how to figure out how to answer this question without making them hate the police. Or, I don't want them to hate police, because all police are not bad. I don't want them to be scared of the police. But what other choice do I have if I'm scared of the police? How could I tell them not to be scared if I'm scared myself? So I really haven't thought about how to explain these things to them. But what I did want to do is take them to the African American Museum in Washington and let them see, how things have not changed from 400 years ago to now as far as Black and white is concerned. and also would like them to see their grandpa's display in the museum so they can be proud and know that their grandfather changed history. His death was not in vain. His death caused ruckus in this world. And I'm proud of that fact. You know, he was a good guy. He didn't deserve to die like that. You know, regardless, anything that he did for the betterment of his children. And unfortunately, when his son got the scholarship to go to college, Rev, as you know, Eric was killed 2 weeks before Eric got to go to college. So he never got a chance to see him play in his first college basketball game. And he was so proud to say, you know, I couldn't get nothing out of him. Everything was for Eric. You know, Eric get ready to go to college. You know, Eric going to need this and he going to need that and blah, blah, blah. And he wasn't even here to fulfill those needs that he was so worried about making sure he had money for. So I really don't know how to explain to my grandchildren, but I'm going to try and explain it to them in a way where they won't hate police, but to just be mindful of the world and the way we live now in this climate and everything.
Roee, let me ask you this, because we're going to let people see the film. We've been talking 34 minutes. The question I want you to answer is, what do you hope someone that does not live in the Black community or brown community, that does not understand this conflict with police and community, what do you hope they learn from this trial, America's trial, the Eric Garner story?
I think, like I said before, I think the most important thing that they need to learn, or first of all, they need to ask. They need to just ask questions. They need to ask, how is it possible that with all this evidence that's presented in this mock trial, the autopsy report that says homicide, the video that shows one man being choked to death by another while he's saying that he can't breathe and the other person isn't letting go of them, how is it possible that with all that evidence that there was no trial, that a DA decided not to prosecute, meaning that the DA thought that there wasn't enough of a suspicion of a crime being committed to justify a trial? I think every person who watched this film that's the question that they should ask. And I think that people who are unaware of the history of racial relations in the US, or certainly people who are unaware of you know, just the other day, President Trump said something about how white people are killed by police more than Black people. And like, yeah, sure, that's true when you think of, you know, absolute figures, but when you remember that, you know, how many Black people exist that live in this country, how many white people exist in the country, it makes a huge difference. And you know, there are countries in the world. There's an activist in the film that we interviewed called Netta Elsie, and she says there are countries in the world where the police don't kill people. And so if your answer to the question, you know, what do you have to say about Black people being killed by the police? Oh, there's plenty more white people being killed by the police. Maybe you should ask yourself, why are police killing people to begin with? And so I think that
at all.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that what I hope that people come out with this film with is yeah, just asking them, how is it possible that we live in a society where this trial is imagined, where this trial is not real, where a filmmaker and a victim's family had to come together and show something like this that never happened? How is that possible?
Esaw, it'll never be closure for you because you lost your soulmate, your other half. But what do you hope can come out of this when people watch this and it ends? What do you hope they walk away with?
Open eyes to see things the way they are and not as they perceive them. Because if you look at that tape of my husband being killed, you can see clearly he was being choked. You can see clearly that he was at a disadvantage. But for some reason, they couldn't see what we saw. They saw what they wanted to see. You know, they saw him resisting. He didn't resist. He had no reason to resist. They had reason to arrest him. I hope that film, like I said, will open people's eyes to see what is there and not what they want it to be. And you can't see intent. So how would you know if he intended to kill my husband or not? You can't see someone's intent. That's in their brain. We're not psychics. You don't know what someone's going to do. You only know what they do after it's done. You can't see what they're going to do before they do it.
You can go online and see the Eric Garner story, The American Trial. You can go direct at www.altavod.com/content/American Trial, Eric Garner. You owe it to yourself to watch this film. Let your family watch it. Get on the internet and tell your friends to watch it. And have group discussions on what you think the verdict would have been if you were on the jury. And know that Eric Garner could have been your husband like Esaw, or your father like Emerald. It's a story that all of us could have been the main character. Unfortunately, it was the Garners this time. If we don't stop it, it could be you or me next time. Watch the film and leave there different than when you started. I'm Al Sharpton with the Garner family. From 6 years ago today till now, we won't stop telling his story.
Yes. Thank you, Rev.
Thank you.
Hope to see you
Thank you so much for having us.
Love you.
Any questions, go to email thisstopstoday2014
Say it again.
Any questions? Email me at thisstopstoday2014
All right, send your questions there. And let me thank our executive producer, Emerald Snipe. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rev.
Thank y'all.
Stay
Thank
blessed.
you so much, Reverend.
All right, God bless.
Yes. We finished?
I think we're done.
Not off yet.
Okay. Later, Roee. Have a blessed weekend.
Later, Roee.
Likewise, Esaw.